and I met this man, and he looked just like me. In fact, he even had the same color eyes as me. And at one point, I mean, it became like a stalker type thing, which I think that's what happens when you get really drawn into the concept of twin flames. Like I broke into this dude's house. Okay. I became crazy, like a crazy person, because I felt this intense sense of urgency. I need this to happen now. We're supposed to be together. And I realized through spiritual integration, spirit is never urgent.
Hey everyone, today I'm super excited to welcome back Betty Guadagno onto the Celestevolve Podcast. Welcome, Betty. How are you doing today?
So grateful to be here, connecting again.
Betty, I have so far not invited any guests back onto the show, and probably something that you don't know is Betty was the first guest on my podcast. So, so I wanted to start inviting guests. Since then, I've had like 35 guests and 35 episodes. So I wanted to wrap up this year with Betty on my show again.
Okay, I'm feeling really special right now. Thank you so much.
Betty, I think for our guests who don't know your story, you gave the best intro for yourself. So can you tell us quickly what inspired you to get on the path that you're on today?
Yes. So I am a near-death experiencer. I had an overdose in 2019, a drug overdose. And my life before that was racked in trauma. I lost both of my parents. They ended their lives together. I experienced a lot of trauma, every kind of trauma that a person can. So you can use your imagination in my life. And then I had this really spiritually transformative experience. I'm not just a traumatized person. I'm a traumatized person who traumatized other people maliciously, intentionally. And then I had this really transformative experience where I experienced a life review. I saw the details of my pre-birth plan, that I had chosen my life, that I wasn't some victim to my circumstance. And it set me onto a spiritual path. And I was an atheist before my experience. I didn't know anything about spirituality. And now my whole life is rooted in spirit in one way or another. That's my elevator pitch.
I love that. Oh, you've come up with the elevator pitch. Good one. I recently watched your the video of you with your boyfriend. You're saying that, one can be like, honestly, I cracked up watching that because you say, do you believe in God? And it's like, no. And you're like, yes. So it's like complete opposites. But then I love the way you ended that video saying how a spiritual person and an atheist person could get along together. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? What do you think? Because, one of the things that I had in mind too, like once I became the spiritual person, is that now I need to find I need to find spiritual friends. And I think we start judging a little bit more than the normal people, What's your thought on that?
Yeah, definitely. Well, so yeah, what Tania's talking about is I made a video with my atheist boyfriend. So and I used to be an atheist. So I know that people can transform their thought systems, and atheism isn't a bad thing. Everybody's entitled to their own thought system. So for me, I have a lot of spiritual friends, like a lot of spiritual friends. I am very involved in a lot of different spiritual communities. So I spend all day in elevated conversations. And so I have a couple of human experiences that ground me back into my human beingness. So if I wanted to just stay in spiritual awareness all the time, I would have never came to Earth. I would have just stayed being a spirit. I would have been somebody's guide. I would have acted as an angel for somebody. I would have never come into form to have a human experience. So my boyfriend really grounds me, because he's a human having a human experience. I mean, I'm always talking about angel numbers, and I'm like, oh my God, look, a feather. And he's like, girl, that's a dirty New York City pigeon feather. That's not an angel. And I'm like, yes, it is. And if I want to think that it's an angel, then that's okay. And if he doesn't, that's okay too. So spiritual ego, I think, is a big part of the spiritual awakening process. Like after my experience, I was like, okay, y'all, I'm the second coming of Christ. Everybody look out. I'm the Messiah. I'm the one. And I didn't realize that it's actually all of us. We're all the one. So every time that I judge somebody else, my body doesn't know the difference, whether I'm judging myself or somebody else. And it can cause dis-ease inside of me to be a very judgmental person. And I am a very judgmental person. So I have to constantly bring myself back to a spiritual center and remind myself that everybody that I see around me is a reflection of myself. And so if I'm judging them, I'm judging a version of myself.
You know, this is true because when you said that you were the second coming of Christ, I swear, you know, I was also feeling the same way. It's like suddenly now I know the truth to the whole existence, guys. Everyone around you, like what can I do with these people? You know, it comes up. And there's a meme on Instagram that says, it shows a frog, okay? There's a frog sitting with the sunglasses, and the frog is like, I'm spiritual. Now I'm better than everybody. So
So
I was
true.
that frog. You know, I remember watching another video of yours where you were saying that you found your twin flame, right? So are you with the twin flame? Is it the same person that you're talking about? No, it's not
No,
the
it's
twin
not.
flame.
It's not.
Oh, okay. So what is it like now? I mean, that time you were like shocked and you were talking about twin flames and karmic and then soulmate and all of that. I don't understand the difference. What is it right now?
Let's get into it. Okay, cool.
Yeah,
So
okay.
everybody really in actual spiritual reality, everybody is a soulmate. The people that you encounter, whether they're filler people, background people, like you're just passing them in transit from one place to another, or whether they're like a major marker in your life, like a major relationship, like a parent or a child or a partner, everybody has some sort of, we're contracted to be in each other's universes. So there's kind of, they've developed these kind of hierarchies of these soulmate relationships. There's karmic partnerships, there's soulmates, there's twin flames, and each of them are assigned their own kind of meaning. I've come to the conclusion after years of spiritual integration that a lot of these things are distractions from my self-love journey. So if I'm going to put all of my effort into finding my twin flame or finding my soulmate, I'm ignoring the person that I'm going to be in a relationship with for the rest of my life, which is me. So I go back and forth, but I did have an experience with a man who appeared to be a mirror to me. And at this point in time, this was before the near death like experience, but after a series of spiritual awakenings that were already starting to take place in my life. And I met this man, and he looked just like me. In fact, he even had the same color eyes as me. And at one point, I mean, it became like a stalker type thing, which I think that's what happens when you get really drawn into the concept of twin flames. Like I broke into this dude's house. Okay. I became crazy, like a crazy person, because I felt this intense sense of urgency. I need this to happen now. We're supposed to be together. And I've realized through spiritual integration, spirit is never urgent. Spirit is patient and tolerant and very chill. Okay. I was being the opposite of that. And I really think that it was my ego trying to make a fool of me. And boy, oh boy, did it. But as I got really close to this man, like face to face with him, I realized that we had the same birthmark inside of our eyes. So I have one brown speck underneath my iris in my right eye. And in his left eye, he had the same brown speck in the mirrored space. So it was literally like looking into a mirror. And when we had that recognition with each other, our chakras opened up and they connected to one another. So we had this intense experience where all of our chakras were aligning with each other, and then we had telepathy. And so of course my mind, I'm like, okay, I have telepathy with another human being. Did anybody else know that you can do this guy is obviously supposed to be in my life. But it never worked out that way. And I became like, I knew that I had to go into treatment because I was a mess. He was a mirror to me, and he was a mess. Like, he was strung out on drugs. He was kind of this party guy lifestyle, and that was exactly who I was, just not caring about other people or life or anything like that. And I thought that it was so cool. And my whole life I just wanted to find somebody to die with. I never thought that I could live with anybody, so I just wanted to find somebody that we could destroy each other, and this was going to be the guy. And the concept around twin flames is kind of like a next level soulmate. It's supposed to be that it's a mirror image to yourself. So Every soul is incarnate with a divine feminine and a divine masculine energy. And this is proven in science with left brain and right brain thinking. So basically, a twin flame is a mirror to your own inner energy. So I am in a feminine form in this lifetime, but doesn't necessarily mean that I embody the divine feminine. In fact, most of my spiritual journey has been spent embodying and balancing the divine masculine. It's about action, agility, strength, discipline, structure. And that's where I live most of my life. My feminine energy is about my spirituality, my intuition, my creativity. And so the twin flame journey is about finding balance between two of those things. It has nothing to do with another person, but man, oh man, it's so fun to romanticize. And that's one of the matrix tricks. The whole earth experience is about distracting us from our soul's mission. So if I can turn my gaze back to God, back to spirit, back to source, I don't have to fall victim to that distraction method. So today I just focus on balancing my own energy. And I see every person in my life as a mirror to myself and where my energy is at. So if I'm around somebody who really annoys the heck out of me, that's me. I got to work on something. I got to practice more patience and tolerance.
Wow, I have never heard this definition of twin flame. Like I asked ChatGPT and I asked other people as well, what is a twin flame? Because, I was in the spirituality community, they keep talking about twin flame a lot, right? Like so much. And it's about if you find the twin flame, then you get activated and all of your gifts would come alive and all of these things. And in fact, one of the person that I was speaking with, that person was married, and then that person started getting messages which said that that person is supposed to be with the twin flame, like break up this marriage and then be with the twin flame. And it was it was a very painful experience for that person, because that person didn't know what to do with this marriage, to stay with it or to go with the twin flame, because they were also getting this telepathy and these kind of things, like the connection felt very strong. How did you get out of it though? Because when you come across something like this, it must have been pretty hard, right? How did you come out of it?
Hey guys, if you've been enjoying this video so far, please make sure to support this channel. You can either subscribe to the channel, leave a like or a comment, or even share it with your family and friends. Apparently, it helps with the algorithm and I have no idea how that works. Also, I'm sending out weekly love notes where I'm sharing with you my own personal spirituality journey, and also will keep you posted on the upcoming community events that we have. We have a lot lined up for you. We've got group channeling events, Akashic record reading events, and a lot of such community events that I think you're going to absolutely love. All you have to do is go to www.celestevolve.com/love notes. Now let's get back to the video.
Yeah.
How did you
So
come to
what
this
happened to
realization?
me was I'm sorry. What ended up happening to me was that I started to experience limerence, and limerence is person obsession. I started to get, I can't even explain to you the level of insanity that I was experiencing. Well, I just kind of did, right? I said I broke into this guy's house. Like, that's crazy. So I started to experience fantasy addiction, where I would spend hours every day escaping into a corner of my mind where I would think about what life would be like if we were together, and how is it going to happen, and when is it going to happen, and is God going to give me this gift? And I spent so many hours, so many days, weeks, months, years, literally years of my life obsessing about another person, instead of focusing on the fact that I'm my best partner. I am the missing piece to myself. It's just me. Jesus is my twin flame. I don't need some actual guy to be my twin flame. But really though, like the Christ energy, or just any divine masculine energy that we have in all of our mythologies. Krishna is my twin flame. Jesus is my twin flame. Moses is my twin flame. I just need to call on the divine masculine energy. It doesn't have to be an actual physical person, but of course, we're here having a human experience. We are meant to couple up, right? Like Adam and Eve, Shiva and Shakti, Jesus and Magdalene, Hera and Zeus. It's been throughout every mythology, but it doesn't necessarily mean physical people. Those mythologies are explaining to us about an energetic force that created into a wholeness. So that's what the Trinity talks about as well. My divine masculine, my divine feminine, and source energy. And that's the Trinity. But, it really took me a lot of surrendering, spiritual surrendering. And not only that. So then the universe throws me a total curveball, right? So I'm researching stuff about twin flames. I'm really educating myself about it because I've never heard of this term before when all this is happening to me. And then I come across it. And so I'm like, okay, well, this guy is definitely my twin flame. And I just start devouring everything that I can find on the subject. Like there's so much stuff about these stages of twin flame, and then there's spiritual teachers who teach you that you don't have to succumb to the stages and all of this stuff, right? So I'm looking at the computer and I say, okay, I'm going to let this go. Because I was reading something about manifesting, and it said that in order to properly manifest anything, you have to detach from outcome. You cannot be attached to if it happens or when it happens. And that's all that I wanted, was to know, when is it going to happen? What am I going to be wearing? Should I have my makeup done every day just in case I run into this guy? What is it? What is it? You know? And so I looked at the computer and I said out loud, okay, I let go. If it doesn't happen to me in this lifetime, that's okay. I know that it exists, and that's enough. And I was in a public library when I was on the computer. And when I walked out of the library, he was right outside of the library. The second that I let it go, he manifested again. And he ran away. He was like, I don't know you. I don't want to have anything to do with you. I don't want to talk to you. And I kept thinking to myself, okay, if he's my mirror and he just said to me, I don't know you, I don't want to have anything to do with you, then that's me talking to me. I don't know me. What am I trying to offer this person that I'm chasing? Like this was the beginning of my spiritual integration. I maybe had, a couple of months into recovery. I had no idea who I was. My whole identity was my party girl persona, just getting messed up all the time, medicating, sedating, abusing myself, letting others abuse me. And so I needed to figure out who I was. And that was the coolest part of the spiritual journey. So his rejection actually catapulted me into the most authentic version of myself. I was able to design myself. And by the time that I got through designing myself, which I'm still doing it, like things change all the time. By the time that I got through with that process, I was so in love with me that I didn't care if anybody else wanted me, because I was so content with who I was, who I am.
I love that. That's so beautiful. When you said that, this statement where you said that when you came out and you saw him standing there and he said that I don't know you, and then you said that that is me telling myself I don't know you, I just want to dig deeper into that, okay? So let's say I judge someone, right? Let's say my colleague, I think that my colleague is just a workaholic, and is just like workaholic and just gets pissed off too often and gets anxious too often. So if this is what I think about that person, what does it imply?
Yeah, well, I would say that it would imply that that's a piece of you. Whether it's a past version of you, have you ever been a workaholic? Is it something that you've overcome and maybe you're seeing that?
I'm also a workaholic too. Like I
Okay,
also work
right.
the
Yeah.
whole time.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
always a lot easier to judge the faults of others than to look at ourselves. So, and even past versions of ourselves. So I'll use this example. When I was integrating my spiritual experience, and I was in a long-term rehab center. I stayed there for a year and a half, and I was there with 25 other women. And women were always coming and going. Sometimes they would stay for a couple weeks and leave. Sometimes they were there for years, and it was this kind of revolving door of people. And there was this one girl in particular, and I despised her from the second that she walked in. And I mean, this is a house full of traumatized women, like we're all there to heal from our different kinds of addictions and traumas. But I just could not get with this chick. And the more that I got to know her, the more I despised her. She was a liar. She was a manipulator. She was a thief. And I just could not stand her. But she was an old version of me. And it was really me rejecting the past version of myself. I just wanted to bypass who I used to be and pretend like I was never any of those things. And I was so self-righteous in my new spiritual awareness. Wow, I'm so great. I know all these things. And so that really opened up my eyes to the mirror, that I'm usually in a state of rejecting an old part of me or a future part of me if I'm not steadfast in my spiritual practices and continuing to integrate and open myself up to new spiritual awareness.
Wow. Okay, that makes sense. So in my case, this means that I probably despise the fact that I'm also a workaholic and I'm also a super anxious person. And so I need to work on that. Okay, that I get it. So we began this conversation by me asking Betty, how is it that you are aging backwards and looking so sexy? Because I spoke to Betty in April and now she's just, it's like I think that, wow, Betty looks so good. You know, you showed a before after picture you show in all the videos. You have to do before after from April to now also. Like you keep getting like the spiritual glow that they talk about. Like that's what's coming out of you. What's the secret, Betty? What's happening?
Thanks so much for that. Yeah, I really, well, first of all, I drink a gallon of water a day. So I feel like spirit really likes that. And I've really taken charge of my spiritual and physical well-being. So I don't think that it's one size fits all. I don't think that it needs to be this way for everybody, but I have cut a lot of things out of my life. I'm a gluten-free, sugar-free vegan. Okay. I used to say that there's no joy left in life, but then somebody reframed it for me and they were like, actually, that sounds like you can probably allow a lot of joy into your life. So I don't eat processed foods. I eat as fresh as I possibly can. I only drink water. Maybe every once in a while I'll have a decaf tea. I don't have no caffeine, no drugs, no alcohol, no nicotine. I try to keep my vessel as clean as I possibly can, not because like I'm trying to win some prize. I'm not trying to be better than anybody else. I'm just trying to be better than I used to be. And I've struggled with eating disorders for all of my life. And recently, a couple months ago, I started taking a weight loss medication, which I'm very against Western medicine. And it was like it took me a very long time to come to the conclusion, is this something that I should do? And in the end, I decided spiritually it was something that would help me, because if I could lose the excess weight that I've been carrying, I mean, I've gone up and down between 300 and 200 pounds multiple times in my life. If I could lose the excess weight that's been so stubborn in my life, then maybe I could be of service more. I could go more places. I could do more things. I could feel healthier. I could be of service to more people. So at the end of the day, that was part of my decision-making process. And that's part of my decision-making process when I decide what food I put into my body as well, or even what information I put into my body.
You know, I've been wanting to go vegan for quite a while now, but how did you do that? Like, did you do it in one go or did it take time? Do you have like any
Very
tips on doing
little.
that?
Very
Very little.
slowly, one thing at a time. I went one meat at a time. And they were all spiritual downloads. So it was like, they were very loud at the time. And it was like, do not eat pork. Whatever you do, don't eat pork. And I was like, okay. And then I'd find some verse in a spiritual text that confirmed that, yeah, like these people didn't eat pork. Maybe I shouldn't either. And then it was red meat, and then it was chicken, and then it was, and it just went slowly, one thing after the next. And then I got the download that I had to stop eating gluten. And I was like, are you guys crazy? I'm not going to stop eating bread. That's nuts. And then it started that every time that I would eat bread or a muffin or something that had gluten in it, I would get really sick. And I knew that they were for real. This was part of my spiritual path, was to slowly let go of certain things. And so now it's just regular.
When you say you get the downloads, right? Like, how does it come? What does it feel like? Are you in a meditation? Or can you explain about that?
These downloads for the, going vegan and gluten free and stuff, they were right after the awakening. So everything was blasted way open. It was like having a conversation, like how you and I are having a conversation right now. It was like just constant, clear communication. Now it's closed down a lot more. It's much more subtle. It's not that way. I'm not like a huge meditator. I don't sit on a pillow for 2 hours a day or anything like that. I live in New York City. I'm very fast paced. I have to multitask and do multiple things at the same time. So I meditate while I exercise. I focus on my breath and my head is very clear in a state of physical movement. So, sometimes it'll come to me in an Instagram reel, or it'll come to me in a YouTube video, and I'll get like a tingle on me as I'm watching a piece of information, or my hearing will go out in one ear while I'm listening to something, and I know that that's them trying to communicate something to me. But usually it's a strong intuition, and intuition is like a muscle. You know, like if you don't get a download, like a white flash of light, that's okay. It's a muscle. So I need to practice using my intuition every day. And I get proof of my intuition in action by making decisions and seeing if they're right or wrong. That's really the only way to do it. So I've hit my head against the wall a million times thinking that something was a spiritual download. Hello, I thought that I was supposed to be with some crazy drug addict guy. I was like, this is my download. I was supposed to be with this guy. And it took me years of hitting my head against the wall to say that wasn't actually the download. It had a different meaning. So practicing intuition is just like exercising any other muscle in your body. You just have to actually keep doing it little by little.
How do you practice your intuition? When you say little by little, for someone who is new and who don't understand what intuition is, what is your take on that? How do they practice it?
So for me, intuition is this kind of heart-centered feeling that I'm guided towards my right path. So one of the things that I do to practice my intuition is I ask the universe for signs. So you want to just have your head clear. First thing that pops into your head, no matter how wacky or weird it seems. Like one time I asked to see a pink elephant. I was like, I am never going to see that. And then I started thinking about the ways that I could see it. I'm like, oh, maybe Dumbo will be on TV and I'll see the pink elephants in Dumbo. And I just let it go. And then that next morning, it was New Year's Day. And on the TV, they were showing the first baby born for the year. And it was a baby girl. And she had a giant pink elephant balloon behind her bassinet. And so I was like, okay, I don't have to worry about how it's going to come to me. I just have to trust that it is going to come to me. And I have so many amazing stories like that. And those stories stack up and they become my evidence. Another way that you can practice intuition and practice communicating with your guides, you have to reach out to them. A lot of it is imagination. Start designing them. I have designed a whole team of guides for myself. And I ask them what their names are. And sometimes they send me their names in really clever ways. And they'll usually come in threes. And that'll be my confirmation that that's how I can refer to them. But they don't care what we call them. As long as we do call them, they just want to have fun with us. They're here to play the game with us too. So I have a story about my father. He's my number one spirit guide. He's always with me. But when I was coming into spiritual awareness, I really thought that I was just losing my mind. I didn't know anything about spiritual awakening. I didn't know anything about, star seeds or light workers or signs or angels or guides. I was coming from a state of zero spiritual awareness. And so I said, okay, Dad, if it's really you. By the way, my father was a terrible father in life, but he's a great father on the other side. He's like the best. I said, if it's really you, send me clear my head. First thing that pops into my head is a fox. And so I'm like, okay, if it's really you, send me a fox. Next day I went to a discount store and it was like a bomb went off in there. There's like stuff everywhere, like there's shoes in the kitchen good aisle and there's underwear in the fork section. And it's just like everything is totally random and chaotic and you would never be able to find what you were actually looking for. And I was online to pay for something. And the end cap is full of all the discarded items. And on the end cap was a book. And the book was called Amazing Dads. And it was a picture of a daddy fox and a baby fox. And I just
no.
I absolutely knew it 100%. And so he always comes to me in the form of a fox.
Wow, that's a clear sign, right? I didn't know how to put this in words because once I got into this whole thing, I wanted to experience the same things. I started getting frustrated because, it's like they could see these things, right? Like when you say that you had seen your spirit guides and this is what it looked like. And then the other NDEs and then the channelers, when they say that they see these things, I started to get frustrated because I couldn't see it. But then then it's like through every guest who comes on to the podcast, I would get some message from every single person. It's like something here, there would be like a subtle message here or there. And when you say that there's one that happened with me too, I was meditating like my meditation is also like I'm in Dubai too, so I don't do like massive meditation, but I guess it's okay. So I did that, and I was asking, okay, is it Yashua? Okay, fine. Is it Saint Germain? Give me a sign. And then the first thing that popped up was the violet flame. And I thought, violet flame? How can a violet flame come up, right? So I thought, okay, maybe it's the flame at the stove. Maybe that is violet color, the stove thing. And then I just fine went back to bed. The next day or 2 days later, my mom comes up with a chain, a pendant with an amethyst, a heart amethyst in there. And amethyst is the violet color, it's the violet flame. And I had no idea that we had a crystal here. So she brings it forth and she's like, Tani, what is this one? And I'm like, what? I never bought it. So I don't know how it ended up here. I have no idea how there is an amethyst pendant in the house. So like you said, it's these subtle signs that pop up here and there, and then you start honing in on your intuition. And it's beautiful. Once you start doing that, then it's like you suddenly you don't feel so alone anymore. I guess that's one of the biggest things, right?
Definitely. And Saint Germain is also represented by a violet flame. So that's really a beautiful, beautiful story. And yeah, I think
Yeah.
knowing that I'm not alone is really comforting. Some people, it freaks them out. Like I would never be able to deal with a full apparition. Like I could never deal with, them really showing themselves to me. I would lose my mind.
No,
But I
you're
love
right.
the little subtle things like, okay, show me a fox, show me a squirrel, show me a pink elephant. Okay, that's cool. I can handle that stuff. Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
But I think that just knowing that I'm supported, unconditionally supported, I never have to worry. That's one of the biggest gifts of having a spiritually transformative experience. And you don't have to die to come into this awareness. You are supported. You are worthy of all love in the universe. I've had all these situations happen in my life where I had these big waves of change. It always comes to me like, I was homeless for years. I was homeless, and I won a housing lottery, and I was like, oh my God, this is incredible.
Oh,
But I only have $20 in my bank account, so I don't know how I'm going to move into this housing lottery, like the apartment. But I think that if God gave me the apartment, God will probably give me a way to pay for it. So I'm just not going to worry about it. And I just I started packing my stuff. I was like, I got an apartment. Like, this is amazing, right? But I had no money, no means to move into this apartment. And then I got my tax return. For the first time in 15 years, I had not gotten a tax return. And I needed $1,862 to move into the apartment. And my tax return was $1,826. So I have a little bit of a dyslexic angel out there working for me, but it was just, I had just exactly what I needed to move. And it was such a blessing. And I just release. So now when things like that happen, I just can go, nah, if God gave me the opportunity, God's going to find a way to make it happen. So now I have a lot of faith and a lot of trust. And that's also a muscle.
wow, that's beautiful. I love the story. You were the first one who told me about Course in Miracles, the book. That book is amazing. Every time I read the book, I send a DM to Betty saying, Betty, the book is amazing. Betty, this is amazing. I just kept sending DMs to Betty, right? So, Betty, when you started reading the book, there are certain exercises that's there in the book, right? Did anything actually happen? Because they were just curious. There were some exercises which said, now you can start seeing light around these objects or anything like that. Did you get anything from the book? It did?
I did, yes, but that's only because it was right after my awakening. It was still within a year of my awakening. Like my senses are not tuned in like that anymore. It's very dialed down because I asked to have it dialed down because I was like, "Hello, I have to be a human. I can't be like seeing light boxes around things. Like you guys cannot do this to me." But it used to be that when I would open up a book and practice the art of bibliomancy, which is where you open up a book to a random page and it speaks directly to you. I wouldn't just open up the book to a random page and see something. There would actually be a light box around what I was meant to read. And it was like, like a constant highlighter. Like my whole life was highlighted by the divine, that I always could find the information that I needed. And that really scared me. I was like, this is crazy. Nothing is real. Like, this is nuts. But A Course in Miracles changed my life. And again, like, you don't have to have a spiritually transformative experience to be spiritually transformed by that book. And I think the thing that I love the most about A Course in Miracles is that it states very clearly in the beginning of the course that this is a required course, but you don't have to get that information from that book. You're going to come into the information that A Course in Miracles provides no matter what. It's required for every human being. So we will all find our way to the information in the book, but it might not be from that method. And basically, the bottom line synopsis of A Course in Miracles is that nothing real can be threatened, nothing unreal exists, and that is where the peace of God lies. Basically meaning that the world is an illusion. We live inside of a dream, and that no harm can come to us inside of the dream. We're playing characters here, and it feels like everything is really real, but actual reality is spirit. Actual reality is heaven, where we still exist. There's no separation between those things. You can dial into the awareness of your true reality at any given moment. The workbook lessons inside of A Course in Miracles are a deprogramming and reprogramming. So it can get you into a more spirit-centered thought system on a regular basis and consistently, because you're doing a lesson a day.
The Course in Miracles is amazing. I guess for me, the one thing that stood out in that book, I think it's through the book that I learned to forgive myself. I had all of these stupid things that I was holding against me for what I did when I was a teenager and these kind of nonsense stuff. But it helped me forgive myself, because one of the things that's mentioned is forgiveness is, correct me, you might know better. Forgiveness or sin is actually a wrong perception. Yeah.
Yeah,
So they.
absolutely.
Did you just see bubbles?
Yeah.
Can you see bubbles?
Thanks,
Oh my
Spirit.
God,
Okay,
that's
they agree
fine.
too. That was
Okay, see.
bizarre.
That's the first time I'm seeing Riverside having
And
bubbles, okay? But okay,
that's
cool.
hilarious. And forgiveness is actually the awareness that nothing has ever happened. That's how A Course in Miracles defines forgiveness. There's nothing to forgive because none of this is real. We don't have to be so attached to the characters that we're playing here on Earth. So I like to think of this as a simulation. And this is my 3D avatar. This is the computer character that I picked to play the game with. And like, if I was actually playing a video game, would I be really attached to what my character was doing in the video game? No way, because it's a video game. So I think it's the same thing. You know, that's the way that I like to process it in my own mind. Like, why am I so attached to what the video game character is doing?
Yeah, that's I also heard that thing, and it's actually the best, easiest way to understand our whole existence. I also bring up the video game concept all the time. So Betty, I saw that you were attending a writer's retreat. Tell us more about it. So
No,
you're an author now, huh?
I am an author. That was a beautiful manifestation. It came to me. It was a manifestation that I didn't even know that I was manifesting. Somebody anonymously donated me a writing retreat scholarship, and all I had to do was get myself there. And it was clear across the country, but I had just enough airline points to get there without coming out of pocket. And I had just gotten my driver's license 2 days before, which, you know, was something that I had lost in active addiction and just regained in
Yeah.
recovery just right now. So I was able to rent a car. It was absolutely incredible. And, you know, I learned a lot about the writing process. I've been writing a book I started writing a book a couple years ago, and then I just kind of got it all out of me, like bare bones. And then I stopped writing and started going on podcasts, started talking more, making content, making videos. And I thought, do people even read books? Like, why am I trying to write a book? You know, like I feel like I do better on screen, like I do better talking. But I've always had this very strong intuition that I was meant to write something. And so I got to go on this writer's retreat and learn a lot about that process. And so thank you for reminding me that I need to be writing every day. My
Oh, is
first
that how
draft,
the process works?
yeah. My first draft of the book is finished, but I still deal with some self-sabotage and some limiting beliefs because I don't know. I know that God thinks that I'm worthy of all the love in the universe, but do I? Sometimes my past can come up and hit me in the back of the head and say, you don't deserve anything bigger than this. Just stay where you're at right now. This is big enough. But I have this dream inside of me that it's going to be so much bigger than I could have ever imagined for myself. And I don't want to hold myself hostage to this. I want to be able to live the biggest dream that I can live, because it's a dream. Like, why shouldn't I shoot for the stars? I didn't come here to play it small.
And for podcasts as well, like you were saying that who even reads books? I read a lot of books, especially if the guest has written a book, I would go to read the book first. There's a limitation to how much you can actually talk about during a conversation, right? Because we get deviated and sidetracked and all of that. So if the book is there, it's wonderful. So I'm excited, Betty. I'm going to be the first one to read the book. I mean, probably everybody would read it at the same time. So I'm excited for your book to come out. And what is it titled? Like, does it have a title? Do you have an idea of when it's going to come out? Because once you say it out, now you have to stick to it. Yeah, Betty?
Oh my God. My goal was to have it out by the end of 2025, but I don't know if that's realistic at this point in time. But I think the title is going to be Dying to Believe, a Life Reinvented.
Ooh, love it. Okay. So we have spoken it out, so it's going to happen. So by the end of next year, we can have a new book coming out from Betty, and then all the podcasters are going to invite Betty to come and talk about your #1 best-selling book. Betty, please share it. How did this happen? So let's wait for that to come out.
I love
Betty,
it. I can't wait to stitch. We're going to stitch the video together of this and then that happening, and it's going to be amazing.
Yes, agreed. Completely agreed. You do a lot of content, right? Like on social media. How do you keep yourself motivated with all of this content? Because you're such a busy person. You're handling all of the IANS events and those things, and then you've got all of these retreats, and you're writing a book. How do you manage all this? What keeps you going?
Oh my God, I have no idea. You know what? Sometimes I draw on the infinite well of energy that is source. So I had this one spiritual mentor, and she said this sentence that has always stuck with me, and I'll share it right now. She said, I went into her office and I said, I can't be here. There's so many toxic people here. It just drains me. I just can't, right? I was like really in my stuff. And she looked at me and she said, you can be the thermostat or you can be the thermometer. You can walk into a room and you can just be affected by everything that's going on, or you can set the tone and you can let everybody else know how they should be behaving. And ever since that, I've never felt drained by anything. I always have a ton of energy. And, I live in a big major city, and I feel like I kind of pull on the energy from the city. I live in a city where people's dreams are coming true every day. I mean, there's a lot of perceived suffering happening in this city as well. But when I think about the fact that I'm around 9 million people who all have their own set of dreams inside of them, it's a lot of creative energy to draw off of. I do make a lot of content for the International Association for Near-Death Studies. I host a podcast for them, and we release 2 a week. And I love holding space for experiencers. It is such an amazing, amazing thing. And then I get to exercise my creativity in the editing process, and yeah, and then I make my own content as well. And sometimes I fall back on that because I do have, 3 jobs and all of that. But I find myself motivated by engaging with people. People like write me questions, they ask me things, they interact with me in lives. And that really lights me up. I love connecting with other people, again, because I'm connecting with myself and I'm connecting with the God inside of them. And it's such a beautiful process. So that's motivation enough.
I think for IANS, like the first time I heard about IANS is because I spoke with Betty, and then I read that it's been there since 1981. Not sure about that, but for now, it seems like Betty is the face of IANS, and I can see, when they post pictures about it on the page, everyone raves about you. Like, I think you set the tone. So you've brought in this whole lot of this young energy into that community, and we can see it. It's beautiful the way that you're doing what you're doing.
Thank you so much. I feel like you might scare some of our board members by saying that, but I really appreciate that. I think that it's a great organization, and yes, it has been around. It's been the leader in near-death experience research for the last 40 years, and it completely gave me a brand new life because I didn't have any words for what happened to me. And then I saw the Surviving Death docu-series on Netflix, and the first episode is about near-death experiences, and they're at an IANDS conference. And so and I heard Dr. Mary Neal share about her near death experience, and I thought, oh my God, that's what happened to me. And I Googled IANDS and I found out that they have sharing groups online. And so I started going to their sharing groups, and I would just spend the whole 90 minutes hysterically crying. And I would come off mute every once in a while and I'd say, why did God reject me? Why did God reject you? Why do we have to be here? And people would just tell me to keep coming back and to keep talking about how I was feeling and that these feelings would pass and they would go away. And I was like, no, I will never. I've been slighted. I will never get over this. And I just kept thinking that it was about getting back to heaven, getting back to the spiritual experience, getting back to the spiritual space. And I didn't realize that I was missing the heaven in the moment, missing the heaven and listening to other experiencers and hearing the joy. When people describe their experience in heaven and I get to listen to the words, I get to go right back there. I get to travel there with them. And it's such a beautiful experience. And so I'm really grateful for that organization. If somebody's listening and they're looking for spiritual community, IANDS Online has sharing groups in all different time zones. There's local groups. Check out the page, see if there's one in your area. I'm the local group leader for the New York City IANDS. We've just started. We're 3 months old. We're just a little baby out there. And it's a really beautiful experience being able to find people in the local community who are interested in the subject matter too.
Yeah, I'm glad that such organizations and such communities exist because some of the guests that would come on my podcast, I saw them all there together. So for me, it felt like, oh, all of my friends are together. You know, it felt like that when I saw that there. I think there's one topic that I want to wrap up with, which is inner child healing. You speak a lot about this, right? Can you tell us what that is and why it's important? Who should be doing inner child healing?
Everybody. We all have
Oh,
some
yeah.
kind of wounded inner child. So,
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be like really overt abuse. It doesn't have to be like, you had sexual trauma or physical abuse or anything like that in your life. The inner child is generally wounded. Something can happen, like a teacher didn't call on you when you had your hand raised, and that can create some sort of traumatic event for a child. So inner child healing is a great part of the spiritual process. I mean, for me, I am healing all the inner parts of myself. It's not just my wounded inner child. I also have an inner saboteur. I have my addiction. I have my eating disorders. I have my sugar addiction. I have technology addiction. Girl, I love scrolling. My limerence, my just obsessive compulsive behaviors that I have. And I'm healing all those parts of myself. With the inner child healing, this is my technique, and you can use it if you like it or leave it behind if you don't. But my inner child loves dancing. Okay. So what I do is I take her to the gym with me and I devote at least 15 minutes of uninterrupted cardio, listening to fun music just for her. So like I'll be on the elliptical. I'm not dancing, but I envision her dancing next to me. And that is her time to shine and love and be. And she's so happy. And when she's happy, I'm happy. So, there's a lot of other ways to comfort your inner child. Sometimes people will like binge on sweets or they'll binge watch TV. And like some of these might be considered negative coping skills if you're doing them too often. But there's a lot of healing that can go on. So for me, I spend a lot of time in visualization with the inner child. Like I brush her hair, I put clean clothes on her, I'll give her a bath. She just wants a healed inner parent. So I have to be the parent to her that she never had. And the parent to myself too. Because again, she's just a piece of me. But when my inner child gets angry, oh my God, forget it. Okay, the gloves come off. I am mean, defensive, controlling, manipulative. Like I really try to blow my life up. So I have to be in check with her on a regular basis. So every morning when I wake up, I cover the inner pieces of myself in this beautiful pink healing light. I spend about 15 seconds doing it. It's not like some big, huge thing that I'm doing. I just wake up and I acknowledge the fact that there's a lot of facets going on in my inner world, and I want to give them each the attention they deserve. And I do the same thing for the light pieces of myself. Every morning, I welcome in my patience, my tolerance, my structure, my discipline, my angels, my guides, just for 15 seconds. Like, it doesn't have to be anything crazy. Just pick up the little 2 pound weight and just do a little bit each day. But every morning, I start my day off with covering my inner pieces in pink light. And maybe I'll get out of bed and I'll stub my toe and I'll curse the world and everything that's ever existed and forget all about my spiritual exercise. But at least I started the day that way. And I also end the day that way as well. So if I can cap my days in a sense of spirituality, I'm doing a great job.
I love that. I also heard this somewhere else as well, where they say that you wake up in the morning and you call your inner child, because inner child represents joy and creativity. And when you get that in everything in life, because before I go to work, I had to go to, like, there was a time where there was SAP deployment and all that happening. So I would wake up and I call in my inner child, and I can see the difference when I do that. When I go to work, nothing affects you. You take everything in a more lighter manner. So I love the exercise. On the podcast, we end with a segment called the Cosmic Close, where I just ask 2 questions, which is inspired by Rupert Spira's work. The first question to you, Betty, is how may we be free of suffering forever?
Ooh, free of suffering. Why would you want to be? Isn't
Oh,
that the
let me
fun
let
of
me
the human experience?
yeah, correct. Suffering would be fine. Let me rephrase that. How may we enjoy lasting happiness?
Whoa, that's a great reframe. Yes. Okay. How may you enjoy lasting happiness is to embrace the parts that are unhappy. So like the whole question around like suffering and happiness, right? This is the dual experience. You are here to be human. Being human means having a dual experience. If you just wanted happiness and no suffering, you would have never left heaven. Okay? Heaven is boring. It's like so snooze. You're only experiencing one thing all the time. Ugh, give me a break. Come to earth for the dual experience. We have this huge scale of consciousness that we're constantly going up and down. So I think that really to have happiness for me is to have contentment, to accept the undesirable, like the kind of darker parts of the human experience, and to just know that they're going to pass. Everything's always going to work out. It always has, and it always will. It might not look the way that you want it to, but it's always going to work out. Like you're always going to be okay.
I love that. The second question, Betty, is what do you think is the nature of our reality?
Oh man. Well, the nature of this reality is a matrix grid that we live inside of. It's a video game. And the big boss, like the King Koopa of the video game, is the game itself. It's the architecture of the game. So everything is kind of like the quote unquote bad guy. So for me, that's what this reality is. Real reality, which is, what A Course in Miracles would call true reality, is just spirit. It's just light. It's no bodies. It's no form. It's boring. I don't know if it's boring isn't the right word, but it's just plain. It's just one flavor. It's vanilla forever. So here, reality, for me, my reality is to focus on my soul's mission, to follow my highest excitement, to follow my joy, like all the channelers say. And so that can change every given moment. It's not going to be the same thing. My joy from 2 years ago is not my joy today. But I just make a really conscious effort to follow my joy, because that's how you beat the big boss of this video game. If you can focus on your spiritual sight, you can accomplish anything here. The world is not real. It's just a collection of thoughts. If you change your thoughts, you can change your reality, the way that you perceive this reality.
I love that. Betty, I love the work that you do. Tell us where we can find you, Betty.
Yes, I'm on all social media. My handle on everything is Buddha Betty. It's a play on words. I'm not actually a Buddha. Not yet. Anyway. So I would love to connect, especially if you're somebody who's dealing with addiction or you're looking to heal. I'm a transformation coach, but if you don't want to work one-on-one, I have found a long list of amazing free resources for you to find the tools to help yourself. I also have some great book recommendations, books that helped change my life and put me on a different course. So please reach out and connect. That's how we can thrive, is in connection.
Love that. Betty, I've had a lot of near-death experiences come on the podcast and they share their experiences. But Betty, the way that you share things, I think you're a phenomenal speaker. I know you got the standing ovation at IANS too. And I hope, I hope that you travel the world doing speaking gigs because you are very inspiring. You're able to mix stories and humor and then come up with these big concepts in a very simplified manner. I love the work that you do, Betty. All the best to you. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you.